Hi guys, my name is Lizzie. I'm an archaeologist and this is my new episode on the Neolithic period on my channel, Dig About. Today I'm going to deep dive into the Neolithic period in the British Isles. But before I do, I just want to quickly ask what your current understanding of the Neolithic period is. So if I was going to ask you for 3 words to describe the Neolithic period, what would they be? For me, I think of farming, both for livestock and crop, and monuments. These things are significant parts to Neolithic culture, but they were not always around or monumental to the societal structure. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the change from the Mesolithic period to the Neolithic period in the British Isles. I'm going to break down the Neolithic period into 3 main sections: the early, the middle, and the late, and explain how life changed dramatically for these people across the 1500 years that they were in the British Isles. Please like and subscribe. Global rising temperatures brought back warmth and vegetation to Northern Europe after the Ice Age. This change led to a migration back to the British Isles, where they lived a nomadic lifestyle, living off the land and migrating with the change of seasons. From site excavations, we know that their diet consisted of hunted mammals, marine creatures, birds, and plants. These vary dependent on the season and the local environments, but consistently hazelnut appears in its masses. This shows that hazelnut was an important staple of their diet, deliberately collected and stored, almost like an on-the-go pocket snack. These communities were masters of their habitats, not just the land, but the sea. In Scotland, we find Mesolithic communities in the most remote islands, showing that they were island hopping and masters of the sea. To truly understand the transition into the Neolithic period, we need to go back to where it all started, in Anatolia. Lying on the Fertile Crescent, this land is prosperous and has also been inhabited by many hominins along their expansion. It is here in the 11th millennium BC where it all began. 2 main things changed: the domestication of both crop and animal, and the permanent central settlements. The first step changed the way that we interact with the environment, as we manipulated the breeding of plants so that they retained their seeds, and of animals so that they produced more milk, were docile, and human dependent. This progression instigated innovation, as for the first time, not all of their energy was spent on obtaining food. No longer did they have to rely on the land and seasonal movements. They could set permanent routes and spend time on non-survival activities such as art and music. New innovations of storage appeared in the form of pottery. We know from lipid analysis that they stored both milk in the form of cheese and meat within them. These changes would have allowed these populations to grow and expand, eventually leading to the migration west. It was here the 2 groups separated. One group went north across the Mediterranean, referred to as the LBK after their pottery style, linear pottery. The other went south, referred to as Cardialware, the same. They migrated with their lifestyle, bringing crop and animal to the new lands. Both migrating groups bred with the local indigenous Mesolithic people. This allowed both communities to integrate their societies, exchange culture and knowledge, gain immunity to local diseases, and increase genetic diversity. Both groups reconnected in Northern Europe and France around 5000 BC, but did not cross the English Channel for another 1,000 years. After the fast-paced migration, this pause is noticeable and questioned. The current theory is that Britain had a cooler climate, so the plants would not have flourished within the environment. Another is that they just had a lack of people to migrate. And the final is the treacherous waters of the English Channel. On the wrong day, this could kill the most experienced sailor. Then calculate the risks on ancient boats with crop and animal on board. Time was needed to plan. This pause allowed the 2 Neolithic communities to reconnect, creating a new culture and monuments. Genetic work has been able to identify that it was the Iberian culture that successfully migrated to Britain around 4000 BC. Once established, the Neolithic period changed dramatically twice, creating the three stages. First is the early Neolithic, starting around 4000 BC to around 3600 BC. The first evidence of Neolithic culture comes from passage graves and pottery. Similar to Wen, there are many theories as to how they populated the British Isles. The first is via sea, between Ireland and Britain. The second is from the bottom coast of England. And the third is from the east coast of Britain, where current ferries cross the English Channel. Either way, once established, they migrated quickly, covering the British Isles across 200 years. But remember, although spread thinly, in small remote communities were the indigenous Mesolithic people. Genetic work initially shows interbreeding, but this was quickly stopped and there was no more admixture. Society only expanded from there. Long houses and small tombs started popping up everywhere, as well as farming, flint mining and trade. With the learned knowledge of the land and the increase of population, this allowed the Neolithic culture to flourish. One type of monument that started to occur in this time period is the long barrow. These are particular of the time and consist of a stone chamber covered in earth with a stone entranceway and surrounding big stones. Some examples are Cranbourne Chase and West Kennet. Another structure that was built are causeway enclosures. These are a ring of ditches that have been theorised to have been used for feasting, rituals, or as a cattle pen. This is because we find many animal bones within the ditches. Some examples are Orsett and Hambledon Hill. Similar to today, we see a difference between the north and south when it comes to the type of monuments that they build. The north have many timber buildings, whereas the south have more causeway enclosures. The difference does not mean that their uses were the same, just that the societal structure had different needs. Hi guys, I'm quickly interrupting this video to ask if you can please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm a small community at the moment, but I'm hoping to grow bigger, and every single like really helps. Thank you very much. With every rise comes an equally great fall. This takes us into the Middle Neolithic, starting around 3600 BC to 3300 BC. Over the 300 years, we see the population decrease by half, dramatically changing the society and the way that they live. Many scholars have theorised why this may have occurred, one being deliberate birth spacing and the other disease. With half the workforce, we see big societal changes. Across the British Isles, wheat production stops rapidly, and with the hardier barley quickly following. Remote islands in Scotland managed to withstand this change for longer, but ultimately also stopped around 2800 BC. Communities just went back to what they know. Foraging, hunting, and tending to their livestock became the norm. Monuments and buildings also stopped construction, with only long barrows, cairns, and linear monuments surviving. Their survival suggests that either their purpose continued or they adapted with the change of times. Interestingly, some monuments only occur within this time period, such as cursuses. Their purpose is not fully understood, with some suggesting that they were used for hunting due to the concentration of arrowheads found at some sites at the ends. What is known is that their placement either becomes or is important to these Neolithic communities, as later many of these are found within monument landscapes. These start their construction within the Middle Neolithic, but thrive within the Late. Some examples are Orkney and Salisbury Plain. The Late Neolithic brought on a new age with new traditions and connections, ranging from the top of Scotland in Orkney to the southern parts of Britain within Wessex. This period started around 3300 BC and finished around 2500 BC. But before we get carried away, we need to return back to the remote communities of the Scottish Isles, where they thrived on the old cereal farming ways. Being remote and living in small communities fueled rapid and independent development from the mainland. Orkney is where this effect comes to life, in stone houses of Scarborough, the first stone circle of Stairness, and grooveware pottery. The latter two traditions was spread with trade and migrations across the Scottish Isles and the rest of the British Isles. Another tradition that formed within the Scottish Islands is crannogs, artificial islands that can be found off the shoreline of lochs. Currently, the only confirmed Neolithic crannogs lie within the Isles of Harris and Lewis, but this tradition continued into the Bronze Age across Scotland. This lifestyle change distinguished and separated them culturally from the rest of Europe.
Back in southern England, their interconnection fuels growth, and we start to see rituals being hosted within the important landscapes.
At Salisbury Plain, the site of Durrington Walls gives us great insight into the importance and extent of these events. Archaeologists have shown from cows' teeth that these cows were born and raised within Scotland and were deliberately brought here to be slaughtered as an offering for the feast. Organising travel from so far with a herd of cattle would have been a great ordeal for this community, but they were not the only ones. Other communities from across the British Isles also travelled here, showing that this event must have held great significance. Together, communities from across the British Isles would have required excellent communication, workforce, and societal structure. The big question is, why? Lying in the same landscape is the famous site of Stonehenge. The site's construction over time brought local sarsen and bluestones from Wales. Each megalith site is uniquely their own, but they have their similarities. The stone circle in Avebury stands within an important landscape. It is also surrounded by a henge and built from local sarsen stones, but it is dramatically bigger and stands as the largest stone circle across Europe. Within the circle once stood a squircle and an obelisk. These big structures to an untrained eye seem rather odd. Unlike a house, there isn't a clear purpose or intention to them that we can understand with a modern culture. Their construction goes beyond survival and is more religious. The majority of the big monuments built with stone appear to connect the people back to the earth, celebrating earth events such as solstices and seasons. Stonehenge and Avebury are famously built around this, gathering people to this day in their masses to watch the midwinter sunset of the winter solstice and the midsummer sunrise of the summer solstice. Monuments were not just built of stone, they were also built of wood in the form of circles and palisades. It is at the height of their culture that sadly these people see their decline. Similar to the Neolithic settlers taking the land from the indigenous Mesolithic people, the Amnaya Beaker culture replaced them around 2500 BC, bringing on the start of the Bronze Age. Within a few generations, we see a complete switch from Neolithic DNA to Yamnayan ancestry. The quick genetic replacement suggests that there was a mass extinction, either through plague or killing. Interestingly, this isn't the death of these important landscapes. Within the Bronze Age, we see burial mounds being constructed, suggesting that this was either a trade-off of knowledge or the physical and spiritual presence of the sites drew in the newcomers. Although genetically these people did not survive, their love and culture within the lands still survives. Thank you very much for watching my episode today on the Neolithic period in the British Isles. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you are interested in watching any more episodes. But before I go, I'm going to share with you my one fun fact, and that is, out of all of the animal kingdom, including plants, bacteria, microorganisms, we are most closely related to the family fungi, mushrooms. I hope you have an awesome day, guys!